Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Greg Chapman Show. This show is mainly meant for facilitators, trainers, and instructional designers responsible for designing or facilitating workshops virtually or face-to-face on different kinds of behavioral topics, from leadership to self-awareness to high-performing teams and so on. The idea of this conversation is to help fellow facilitators and trainers learn techniques, take a look at their own mindsets, bust some of the facilitation myths, tips and tricks to find their way in here. And all of this from facilitators who are masters of their craft from across the world. If you're starting out or if you're a veteran, you'll find something in here. Today's guest is Nihal Ahmed. He's the founder of Limitless Institute that helps unlock human potential in people and communities. He designs powerful programs and tools to help people and companies discover their purpose and become future ready. And that's something future ready. That's something we're going to be talking a little more about later on. Nihal has an entrepreneurship academy, something he started in Africa, a fellowship for social entrepreneurs. Models for sustaining villages in Punjab, and he's built many learning toolkits, is what he's told me. He's also a TEDx speaker, TEDx Strawberry Fields. His talk was around Ikigai, and I really liked the topic. 3 questions young people should be asking themselves. He's spent time, he tells me, in 67 countries, learning, working, connecting the dots, and he conducts retreats and experiences, programs. He also prepares beautiful toolkits, curates communities, or speaks at international and digital events. Welcome to the show, Nihal.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Straight off, Nihal, just wanted to ask you, you've been facilitating for a long time and you've done a lot of things. Not just in terms of designing and facilitating, but also in terms of upping your game, increasing your learning. How has this journey of facilitation, being in it, changed you as a person?
Fascinating question. I think as I begun, just from a rudimentary understanding, it was how do I impart a certain piece of information to a certain audience in an engaging way. That was the bare minimum. But I think as I built a relationship with the craft and with more audiences and trying to push more intimacy to come through some of these workshops and some of these conversations, I think being a better listener, lots of empathy, especially around sometimes it's empathy for even the system that oppresses, in this case, sometimes the education system here in our country as well. And over time, it's also taught me to be vulnerable. One of the things I've struggled with since I was a child is the ability to truly express my feelings vulnerably. I was usually closed. I was usually closed in my interactions. Never really shared some of my secrets. Never really shared some of my fears, my concerns. And I think facilitation has sort of opened that up because of some of the workshops that I do, and that requires people to be vulnerable, people to open up, and people to try to find these possibilities. And sometimes that can get uncomfortable and messy. It would not be authentic if I don't do that myself. So recently, my mentor told me about how sometimes as you're facilitating and as you're noticing when you talk to people, you see some concerns, you see that they're not connecting well, or they're distracted, or your own fears, your own limiting beliefs are starting to come out. He said that try to bring that background into the foreground and talk about, hey, I've always been uncomfortable talking about this, or I've always been this person who feels this way about this, right? And when you bring out your fears, you start to be vulnerable, and you start to notice things that are unsaid. Immediately, connections start to form. Deeper connections, intimacy starts to form. I think even in some of the retreats that we do, it is that invisible curriculum, that invisible sort of sphere of care that pretty much makes what we do special to people who attend.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to be asking you a question. So I'm just seeding the question right now. I'll come back to it. When you said, it's a nice thing that you said about your mentor and how he told you that share what's happening inside your mind with your participants. I think, and the question I want to be asking is, if you can share with us an example of, give a little context of what was happening in the outside space, a little bit around the topic, and how were you feeling in your head? You shared it, and then what happened? So I'll come back to that, because I think for a facilitator, it's pretty scary to stand up in front of a crowd and say, I'm confused, or I don't get it, or you're saying something to me and that's making me defensive. Vulnerability, yes, and it can go either ways. If you're being vulnerable, you can fall. I mean, that's why it's vulnerable. There's no guarantee that you won't. So yeah, I mean, it's intuitively, I just feel it's an extremely powerful tool. If you could just unpack a little bit and say, so what was the context and how did it unfold?
Absolutely. So here's the thing with facilitators, right? Like sometimes we as facilitators, or even the audience, sometimes they feel like there is a teacher-student relationship. Sometimes we as facilitators may not own, or may not sort of have a relationship where we apply what we teach or what we share, and sometimes that can be so clear for people to see, right? And that's when you either have these gotcha moments, you either have these, but you said this, but you just did this,
Yeah.
So that those kinds of scenarios as well. Now, this hierarchy sometimes is, in a bad way, it catches people like that, and in a good way. But again, it has dark undertones, is to say that this man has just sort of cracked it, and that man can do no wrong, right? Or that man has that man just pretty much has figured all of this out. Most likely, no, right? I think people, at least in my journey, people have I feel like people need journeymen rather than a teacher, or rather than somebody, rather than that hierarchy.
Very well put, journeyman, yeah.
So, because there've been moments where people say, but it's you have done this, I probably can never do that, right? Or it's one of those scenarios where you're trying to challenge them. It becomes a tool. So instead, a journeyman to say, hey, this is something that has really helped me. These are my thoughts, my feelings, my struggles, all boiled down to this specific framework, or this card, or this insight I have. And I want to take this insight along with you. Okay? And here are the areas where I have struggled. So, for example, I talk about areas where, for example, money. I've been very uncomfortable having a conversation about money, even deeming my worth, because there are moments where if I get a slight feeling that this person can't afford it, or I feel like, okay, this person doesn't value me that much, I either get defensive or I just let go of the money conversation altogether. And this is a problem that many facilitators share as well. So as my mentor said, bringing the background into the foreground, and sharing that, and saying that I haven't had the best relationship, and saying that even these tools, I myself, until recently, never really tried it on my own problems, because I have created a problem-solving tool. And if I don't go to that myself, what does that make me? How can I even sell that to other people? And I didn't do that, and I took some time to actually do that and see, hey, how good is my product to solve my own problems? And would that be my go-to guide for those specific problems, or would I go to somebody else? Because if I'm doing that, then what am I doing with this? And I did that, and I realized that yes, it is actually a very powerful product, but there are a few shortcomings, and I talk about those shortcomings. So whether it is about my product, whether it's my own journey, where I've struggled, I think just trying to lay bare with them, and you create a sense of trust.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt, but as you speak, this word vulnerability and authenticity gets thrown around a lot. And as you talk, what I'm taking away from that is that authenticity or vulnerability could have a few legs upon which it could stand. I think one of those legs would be, let me put it differently. As you were speaking, I was reminded of this movie called Prestige by Christopher Nolan, one of my favorites. Amazing movie. So, long story short, there's a magician, and everybody's trying to figure out. He makes the fish disappear from a glass bowl, and he makes the fish disappear. And the magician would always hobble onto the stage. He had bow legs, and he'd always hobble on. And fellow magicians just couldn't figure out where the fish was going. You have, the fish set up on the stage, and it would disappear. And anyway, they finally at the end of the movie, they followed this guy, followed him. What they saw was that the big bowl of that contained the fish would be between his legs, and the fact that you can only hold a big bowl of fish between your legs if your legs are bowed. So if he walked straight in real life, everybody would figure it out. So he actually changed his real life walk so that nobody could make out when he was holding the bowl of fish and when he wasn't. So he actually changed that to match his performance on the stage. And these two dots are connecting for me, that vulnerability, yes, but along with vulnerability goes a lot of hard work, saying, I will live this in the real world to whatever extent. And I will also draw power from there. Nihal, you spoke of your retreats. If you could give us what kind of retreats do you do? What's it all about?
Sure. So, sure. So retreats, or at least having these intimate experiences, is something that I try to make a part of every program that I do. For example, I ran a social entrepreneurship fellowship a few years ago, and we started that in Bhutan. And we did this with the Gross National Happiness Center with this wonderful Buddhist monk called Dr. Samdu.
Wow.
And we started off every morning with meditation, mindfulness exercises, and taking walks, really embracing all of our senses throughout the day. And we would have sessions, and we would have moments where we would talk about things that have been holding us back. So we shared some deep, vulnerable situations in our lives where we've struggled with something, where we've been hurt, where we've dealt with different forms of abuse. And it was really that is the moment where we all got so close together. And these are people I talk to on a daily basis, even years have gone by since. And we have a deep found respect because of that. So that's one specific piece.
Sorry, was that retreat on, I missed that perhaps, was that on Ikigai or self-awareness?
No, this was just to help. This was a fellowship program on well-being for social entrepreneurs.
So what does that mean, well-being for social entrepreneurs?
One of the reason we even focused this for social entrepreneurs, and specifically in well-being, is most social entrepreneurs that have largely, lots of studies have shown that social entrepreneurs are highly prone to burnout. and they're
Tell me about it.
overworked,
Tell me about
overwhelmed,
it, man. Tell me about it. Yeah. Yeah.
overwhelmed, under-resourced, and underappreciated.
Yeah.
And many of them have gone in with sheer passion. Like one such person that I know, because of the Nirbhaya case, he was so frustrated and also inspired that with zero experience in a space like this, he just began his journey. So many of them haven't really even discovered how to solve a problem a specific way, or are they even solving the right problem? Because they've gone in with that sheer passion, that energy, or that frustration for the problem.
Yeah.
And more often than not, if you see, like India has a nonprofit for every 50 Indians, right? And they're far, like if you just look at that with numbers, there are far too many companies solving or organizations solving a specific problem. Bangalore, my city, for example, has hundreds of nonprofits dedicated to women, violence against women. But is the problem really going away? The answer is no, because a lot of them are solving symptoms, thinking they're solving the disease. For gender violence to create a panic button is not solving the problem at its core, right? So these are all of the missing pieces that we felt that we needed to stitch through a program. So that's why we built this up, and especially around well-being. A lot of social entrepreneurs report depression, report anxiety, report their relationships not being strong enough. So we wanted to look, and even mindful. Like many of them, there's also this social entrepreneur syndrome, right? Like saying, I cannot splurge on this wonderful dinner because with that money, the people that I'm actually working for can feed their family for a week.
Yeah.
So there were instances of that even during this program that we could see. So the idea was, let's take a crack at trying to figure that out. So that was the program for social entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Then another retreat that we did in 2019 was something called Story Collective. And this was for creators of different kinds, which includes social entrepreneurs, which includes artists, designers, any form of creators. And the problems you noticed with them were three things. One is they again got into that craft just because they loved doing that craft, but never really zoomed out and said, why is it that I do this? What do I love about it? What am I really great at? And how do I use that messaging and turn me into a personal brand, create a niche for myself? So that's one. Second is telling their story to the world, telling the story of their unique approach to their craft. And then finally, building the right systems so they get to build a more successful business or a successful practice with the right frameworks for managing their money, for building systems as they scale, all of that, right? So three find your story, tell your story, and live your story.
And as you share these three pieces, when I say three, I'm saying the first one is facilitator. You're a facilitator. The creators and the social entrepreneurs. I see a bit of a red thread running right across them, and that red thread is that. Let me just first speak from a facilitator's lens. As a facilitator, for the longest time, in the introduction, I spoke of busting a few myths. But as a facilitator, for the longest time, I believed that the way to move up the facilitation ladder in terms of growth, was just by getting better and better at the craft. More facilitation techniques, deeper techniques, and so on and so forth. Read more books, attend more programs, sort life out for yourself. And, I'm also connecting this to something else that you said. What I realized was there's more to it. If you want to be a successful facilitator, the word success would also encompass some of the other things you said, like, and I've been writing this down, like money. Your discomfort with talking about money, like marketing, right? Like telling a story. about yourself, about what you do. Like these social entrepreneurs you spoke of, and understanding it and what they're trying to do at a systemic level. And there's so much more than saying, okay, this is a craft. I'm good at this. This is what I'm going to do, and just going for it. Now, with that in mind, my idea is to give out and help as many facilitators as I can. I'm also noticing that, I'm just digressing a little bit. I'm also noticing that all your programs, the 3 retreats that you're speaking of, are very niched. They're not just saying, oh, come on, it's a mindfulness program. It's a well-being program. It's a well-being program for social entrepreneurs. That's niched. This is a program for creators, again, niched. Now, and that's what's giving rise to my next question, which is saying that if a facilitator, let's say a facilitator has been in the game, knows her or his stuff well, and wants to start off a retreat. And when I say retreat, I'm assuming that it's not an in-house program. People are not coming from one organization. I'm just saying it's an open thing. People are coming from across Bangalore, or just coming from across wherever. How does a facilitator, let's just say you've got it in mind what you want to do, and for which niche do you want to do it? Let's say that's clear. How does a facilitator go about marketing and setting the whole retreat space or open program space up, or masterclass, whatever word you want to use? How does one go about setting that up?
Okay, so the way we structured it, again, even with the fellowship program, I went and read a lot of white papers and proper research. But I also went and spoke to a lot of social entrepreneurs. I spoke to organizations that house and host and support social entrepreneurs about what the challenges are. Because once we've really nailed that down, and we say, are you a person who does X, Y, Z, or who feels X, Y, Z, and talking about their fears, talking about their concerns, talking about their frustrations, talking about where they really want to go, and areas that they believe that could sort of shift the needle. And as long as you communicate that well, I think people will start listening to you. So even with creators, the idea was there are so many creators who feel like, man, I know that I'm talented. I know that I'm good. People like me, but why am I plateauing? Why don't enough people know about me? Or with social entrepreneurship, I know that I'm doing something that's so impactful, but why am I not enjoying the journey? Why is this so hard?
What I hear you saying is that you went and spoke to a lot of these people, and in the speaking of it, that was your marketing.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm able to really gauge their fears, their frustrations, their pain, or their hopes, and that the sense of clarity that they're seeking, and as long as I just communicate that, I think that's job half done.
So if you were to just extrapolate, and from these 3, the creators, the social entrepreneurs, and you being a facilitator, and your other programs that you run, and if you were to draw out some principles that you could share with another facilitator, saying, hey, buddy, if you're going out to do an open program, here are some principles, follow this. And I'm saying just from the marketing space of it, what would that advice be? 1, 2, or 3 points, whatever.
So I actually created a sort of DIY fellowship kit. So for example, for the fellowship program on well-being, I wanted to first understand what is it that's missing. Then I wanted to understand well-being. What does well-being encompass? What is well-being really? What are the different components of well-being? What has the Dalai Lama said about well-being to Eastern philosophers and Western philosophers? And Carl Jung talked about it. And can I put all of those thoughts together and create a frame? So for me, well-being means this. And these are the elements that I want to help people with. So we actually created a periodic table of well-being.
Oh, nice.
So each of them had elements like, say, purpose, physical fitness, gratitude, all of these constitute well-being. To that, each element, we went deeper to say, who's doing amazing work in gratitude? What does gratitude contain? What elements does gratitude contain? What are the interesting projects around the world that are happening in the space of gratitude? What are the pieces of literature? Now, when you have that frame, we know that, okay, this is the problem that they're dealing with. This is what well-being actually is. This is the frame around well-being. And even from a marketing standpoint, saying that we have understood well-being to be this. We have understood that social entrepreneurs struggle with well-being. We want to turn these into bite-sized classes, courses, programs, interventions for these people.
So
right?
having clarity of what you want to do also feeds into your marketing game, right?
Yes, I mean, it has to begin from there. Like, I think just clarity of exactly why, what is it that they're desperately seeking, and why is it not happening already? Right? Even with, for example, even with Ikigai, is lots of people want to live purposeful, meaningful lives. Lots of people want to love what they do for a living.
Right.
Lots of people, even if they don't do that, lots of people want at least some room in their day to do something that they really love, or create a passion project. Like in some cases, even something like a podcast of something that they truly believe in as a passion project. You've wanted to do this. Why haven't you? Oh, because I don't have time. Oh, because I don't have the technical know-how. Oh, because I don't have the money, or I don't have that, like lack of dash. Right? So understanding what is it that they're struggling with, what is it that they're seeking, and why is it not happening?
Okay. Audio's a little patchy.
Oh, shall I repeat that?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
All right. You did speak of Ikigai, and just want to get a little into the weeds now. You do conduct workshops on Ikigai, and you've done a lot of legwork and heart work, and hard work. So leg, heart, and hard work, putting your Ikigai program together. I've seen the deck of cards, the Ikigai cards that you've created. When you're doing an Ikigai program, if you could share any one technique or any one thing that you do in your class that a facilitator, just having read a little bit about Ikigai, can pick up and use in his or her class.
So as in one card?
No, a technique,
a technique.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, with Ikigai, the idea was, how do we build, like, people need to really know themselves fully, know what they really love doing, what excites them, their needs, their values, the kind of life they want to lead and leave behind, a legacy want to leave behind. All of that, stitching all of that together, can get overwhelmed. About this, their personality tests, I just felt like none of them really spoke to the uniqueness of a person, because I can't be bucketed with 400 million other people because I answer it a certain way. I'm definitely so much more unique than that, and that required qualitative answers, inquiry, and that needed to be fun for people to actually do them. So how can we break it down into bite-sized elements? And now for a facilitator to do that, just a question makes it either monotonous or just not enough for somebody to open up. So I always facilitate a question with a story, a story of a real life person from my life, or a concept, and that sort of sticks with them, even if the question doesn't. And then we unravel. I ask some more sub questions, and then we have a conversation about it. I talk about my journey there and they talk about their journey. And then we both leave with some simple habit or a ritual that they can pick up for that. Because there is a lot of wisdom in gaining an insight and learning patterns about yourself, but it will only matter if we have put it to action. It only matters if we've turned that into something either repetitive or turning that into something spiritual, something or create some sort of sanctity around that with somebody else or in a certain environment.
So what I hear you say is you're beginning with a principle in mind, an Ikigai principle. This is where you want to go broadly, holding it loosely. And that principle you're communicating via a story from your real life stories, as we all know, are really powerful. And then you're unpacking that through a series of powerful questions, 2, 3, 4 powerful questions, and closing with a ritual, closing it with a real world kind of a action. I'm thinking if you can recall, only if you can recall, 1 or 2 powerful questions that help you. So let's say you've told a story. I've heard your story. And now you want to, or the idea is for me to begin to reflect. I wanted to say the idea is to create an aha moment, but I'll hold on to that. The idea is for me to get to reflect about certain aspects of my life. How do you do that? What are 2, 3 powerful questions?
So I think I want to start with a question that's not as powerful, but the concept is highly misunderstood, which is passion.
Okay.
Now, passion, every time I ask people, okay, if I say, what would be your passion? What are you passionate about? What would you say? And they say, I'm passionate about music and dance.
So let's just say I'm saying I'm passionate about writing. Okay.
Writing, perfect.
So
now, my argument is that passion is not something that could be an activity, a career choice, or a profession. But passion is the high you get when you do something or be someone when you do it.
Right.
Okay. So now, when I zoom back and let's say I talk about writing, I'll ask you to go 1 level deeper.
Sorry, I'm missing out on the audio. You said I'll ask you to go 1 level deeper. Got that?
I ask you to go 1 level deeper.
Got it.
Now, so when I talk to, for example, artists, and I say, what is it about painting? What is it about your art that you believe you're passionate about? And they tell me that, and when they have to think about it and they go 1 level deeper, they say, I love being able to sort of make sense or being able to express my complex, messy, dark thoughts into an art form.
Okay. Audio a little patchy, but their ability to express their complex thoughts into an art form.
For some people, it is, I love making something out of nothing. Or even like sports, people who are passionate about sports, when I talk to them, and like I give this example of how maybe if there are 11 people on a cricket team, maybe not a single person is passionate about cricket as such, but what cricket gives them, the high they get when they play cricket. And for some people, it is, I love being challenged. I
think that's something very powerful that you said, because I'm trying to use it on myself right now and ask you, so why am I passionate about writing? And writing is crazy work. It's sitting in the fire. And if I try to answer that, it's not writing that I'm passionate about. It's what writing gives me. For example, it gives me clarity. Right?
Yes.
I'm able to clarify my thoughts. It gives me this happiness of being able to take something which is in my mind and put it out in the world and get appreciation in return for that. So I think that's, and I never thought about it. As you're asking me, I never thought about why am I passionate about writing? Never thought about that. What would be a follow-up question? So let's say I've told you this about writing. What would be a follow-up question?
So great question. So now usually when I can tell you what I usually do, and then we can do that with you as well. So for example, when I tell people this and they say, yes, I love, say, sports because I get to perform in front of other people, or I get to work as a team, or work together to defeat somebody. I love the nature of strategizing to defeat, right? Or strategizing to compete, or to challenge, or to overcome a challenge, or something like that. And in your case, writing gives me clarity. Writing makes, maybe it could even be making me feel in control. Now, the idea is to say, okay, let's zoom out and see what aspects of your life can you bring that high to. For example, usually when I've done workshops for these IT companies, they give me the same thing, that I love dancing, I love painting, I love whatever, or anything else. And they say, but this is my full-time job, and there's a disconnect. And it doesn't have to be a disconnect. I never want to claim that, hey, you should quit your job and follow your passion. And that's terrible advice. You should create more moments of passionate highs in your everyday. Okay. And if that can actually give you enough money, then it makes sense to do that. But if, let's say, you love creating something out of nothing, then can you create more moments in your day, in your office, in your work, in your at home with your family, where you make something out of nothing? It could be a concept, it could be a story, it could be something you work with your hands. It could be pretty much building a whole new subdivision in the company that you're working in. Anything. Can that give you the same kind of high? Because careers will come and go, careers will evolve, a lot of them will be obsolete. The high you get is connected deep down. And if I notice the things that I loved doing, things that gave me that high, even when I was a kid, it's largely the same things. But it existed in different forms. I loved building cities, making Legos. I loved talking to people and solving something for them. And it exists in a different form now.
Right.
But usually there are patterns that when we are 10 years of age, they do resemble in some ways, that things that still make us really happy, things that make us excited, things that get you in a state of flow, or things that make time disappear.
Okay. I like that question again. What other aspects of your life would you like to take this quality to? So in my mind, I had answered, it gives me clarity. So then I would begin to think, where would I like to take this clarity to different spaces of my life? Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And as I think about this, and as we approach the closing of our talk today, I have just two questions for you. One is, what book would you like to share with us, saying, hey, if you want to up your facilitation game, right? And I'm not, unless you can also mention it from the business marketing angle as well. But if you want to up your facilitation game in terms of improving either your technique or your being, the doing of the being, or what's a book or two that you would recommend to fellow facilitators?
Okay, great question. I think no, I haven't really read a book that has helped me with my facilitation, but I think the one that comes closest is Empathy by Roman Krznaric.
Now, Empathy by Roman
Krznaric.
How do you?
KRZ NARIC.
KRZNARIC. Roman Krznaric. Okay.
So he talks about why the world needs more empathy right now. Why is it? Why do we need it now more than ever before? And what is the future of empathy? And he claims that future of empathy. So what it claims is there's going to be a time in the future where we might have empathy museums, because just because of the kind of stimuli that we're getting right now, we will need to have museums to help us trigger certain thoughts. And in fact, he's created a small museum like that, a museum where there's a human library. So you have people from different walks of life, and you can borrow them for conversations. You have something called a walk in my shoes, where you can put on earphones. You can pick up. It's a shoe store, and you can go and pick up a different kind of shoe. It could be a Kolhapuri chappal. It could be a boot. It could be a pair of heels. And then along with the shoes comes an audio device. So you put that in, wear those shoes, and as you take your first step, the story starts to unfold. So the more you walk, the more the story talks about the person whose shoes those were, and a day in the life of that person, and their problems, their struggles, and what they go through. And even more, and what excites me here is some of the ideas he shared about what an empathy museum could be, what those exhibits could be. Like, for example, there are moments, there are empathy-like museums, empathy museums of different kinds around the world. The one is Dialogue in the Dark, where you walk into a museum where it's complete darkness, and the tour guides are visually impaired. So you would see as much as they would in that, and they would still tell you about the exhibits, and you touch and feel, and your senses are heightened.
Wow.
And you have a whole approach to exploring something here. And then there's a travel company called Travelize, where when they take people on a tour, 50% of them are visually impaired. And in that trip, 50% of the visually impaired travelers are assisted by the ones that are not, to really to experience the trip, whereas the same way 50% of people who are not visually impaired, they actually learn during that trip to experience the trip with their other senses. So many people who've been on the trip have talked about how life-changing it's been, and how they've been able to experience life differently after that.
Nice.
So keeping those in mind, like, I make exhibits like this, and I make these live action role-playing games for different stakeholders like investors and bureaucrats and things like that, to shock them and to help them connect with a target audience or a stakeholder or a person from an underserved community, because no amount of talks and pictures can really do justice to that as much as you are experiencing them. So that has helped me shape my facilitation journey in a slightly different light.
Great. So both being and doing. So it's changing you at a being level. It's also giving you techniques that you can use in a program. Nihal, in closure, would ask you, is there any message that you'd like to leave our fellow facilitators with, fellow designers of learning or facilitators? Is there any message you'd like to leave them?
I think from all of my years of being a facilitator, the few things I would say is just the process that I followed is really understanding what the problem you're going after is for the stakeholder, the audience, and what their problems are, and learning to differentiate symptoms from the actual. Then understanding the space that you're trying to, or space or the tool you're trying to use to serve that community, and zooming back and creating a frame of that. Using a lot of stories, using a lot of experiential elements in your facilitation, and in you imparting that piece of information. And finally, leaving with some habits or rituals that can get sticky, and they can build from there.
It's been great speaking with you, Nihal, and we can find you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you give us some coordinates, if you can?
Sure.
So, can we find you? Someone
Yeah.
wants to know.
So I'm Nihal Ahmed on LinkedIn or Nihal1. If you can find it, if you're looking at it from another part of the world, it would be linkedin.com/in/NIHAL1. My website is nih.al, no .com, nothing. It's just nih.al. Same thing, nih.al on Instagram if you want to find me there. And limitless.institute if you want to learn more about the kind of work that I'm doing, and the Ikigai.com if you want to learn about what we're doing there. And we're also creating a community on LinkedIn around Ikigai and around purposeful work to help people untangle some of the things that they're struggling with, just again through simple habits.
Super. Thanks for that. And thanks for making the time. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for this, Greg. I had a wonderful time chatting with you.
Likewise. Yeah.
Take care.